Well, widespread severe weather may be coming to an end, but we've got a new problem on our hands. A nor'easter is set to bring unsettled weather to the East Coast over the first part of the weekend, including snow. Well, we're certainly going to take a look-see. And what about that Indianapolis 500 forecast? We're going to look at that too, as well as your Memorial Day weekend forecast. We've got it all right here at Cold Rain's Weather World, and it starts right now. Well, hey friends, and welcome to this special Hump Day edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. It is Wednesday, May the 21st. Can you believe we are almost at the end of May? It just seems like yesterday I started this channel. Well, we have grown a lot. This is the fastest growing new weather show on the internet, and we've got all the weather, and we're going to get into all the weather here in just a minute. Thank you for subscribing. If you've subscribed, if you haven't, please consider doing so. We're growing rapidly, and I certainly want to thank you for spending time here on this channel. We cover the weather here. We take a look at marquee and upcoming events. Fortunately, we don't have anything all that major except for maybe this nor'easter this weekend to take a look at today, but we're going to look at your weekend forecast. We've got geology to cover too. We had an earthquake, volcanoes, solar, asteroid, tsunamis. We've got it all here at Cold Rain's Weather World, but we always start by testing your weather IQ to just see just how much you know about the weather. So we're going to start today with a question about drought, okay? So here's the question. What is the name of the index commonly used to measure drought conditions in the U.S.? The Richter Index, the Palmer Drought Severity Index, the Kelvin Rainfall Gauge, or the Fujita Wind Scale? You probably are going to be able to guess this by process of elimination. But if you know the answer, type it in the comment section. If you don't know it, simply wait till the end of the show and I will have it for you. Taco Bell is expensive, folks. Too expensive if you ask me. We went for Taco Bell the other night to get 3 chalupas, just a corn tortilla with beef in the middle and lettuce on top and things like that. $16. That's crazy. We had back in the day, it was $59, $79, $99. That was the Taco Bell menu, and you could eat all day on $5, and now $5 gets you a pack of hot sauce, maybe. I don't know. But if you know a way to eat cheaply at Taco Bell, not that we eat there all the time, but it would certainly be helpful. So let me know your thoughts there. A combo at a fast food restaurant now is $13. It's just unbelievable. Things are just way too expensive out there. Anyway, I digress. Satellite imagery is free, at least. We can look at this for free and don't have to pay anything for it. And I'll tell you about it. We've got this big system that's been plaguing us with severe weather. The severe threat is winding down. The system is still winding up, particularly here in the Great Lakes and Northeast. And we'll see that here in a minute. But you can see all the clouds associated with that low pressure sitting up here over the Ohio Valley. Frontal zone extending all the way back down around through the southeast, and that is lighting up some showers and some thunderstorms. And so you can kind of see those lighting up on the radar through Louisiana, up in here in Alabama and Georgia, and off the coast of North Carolina. Whole little, boundary trough action going on up here along the border, producing clouds and rain up in the north, Midwest, and the Great Lakes area. Another little system down in Mexico that could play a role in southern Texas today as the heating of the day occurs, and we get a little bit of instability there with that system coming in. Could see some severe weather down here, not a widespread event, but certainly could see a few areas of hail and high winds as thunderstorms develop clusters. Here's your radar view. We'll put this in the current view, and you can see all of that rain, North Dakota, South Dakota, through Minneapolis, down into Wisconsin, Madison, Chicago. You're seeing rain showers out there this morning. Michigan, a little bit north of Detroit, but circling in through southeastern or western, New York, Pennsylvania, most of Pennsylvania seeing some rain this morning in one way or another, down through D.C. in toward Richmond, over in eastern Virginia and northern North Carolina, east, just north and east of Raleigh over here toward I-95, and then stretching back down from near Augusta, I suppose, all the way back through southern or a little strip here through Georgia. So that's what's going on out there this morning. A couple little snow showers out in the higher elevations in the Rockies. Looking at high temperatures today, going to be continuing to be cool, 40s and 50s across much of the north, central plains, Midwest, Great Lakes, into the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic. We're not going to get out of the 50s today under clouds and rain. Out in the Rockies, the same story. 60s and 70s through the middle of the country, and 80s and 90s, even some hundreds down here in the desert Southwest, Mojave Desert, places like that. You guys are going to soar into the hundreds. Everybody else, 80s, 90s, Florida in the 90s with humid conditions. Tonight, looking at our low temperatures, very chilly across the north in the 30s. A lot of this is below normal, of course. 30s and 40s across much of the north, 50s as you get on down here into the south and southeast, with 60s and 70s down along the Gulf Coast into Florida and into the southwest as well. So that's your temperature forecast for today. Now, we have had a very, very active severe weather period. It's the other day I did on one of the shows that I did, I showed you that we had 2,400 severe weather reports and 100 tornadoes, something along those lines. Well, that has increased over the past couple of days. We've seen a ton of severe weather reports come in. We're now at just shy of 3,400 severe weather reports since last Thursday, with about 150 tornado reports. Now, a lot of this stuff will continue to be assessed, and the numbers will continue to evolve over the coming weeks. And certainly they're going to be assessing some of the tornado damage that has happened, and we'll know more. There was another EF4 confirmation that occurred yesterday, I believe, but Huntsville was under a tornado emergency yesterday. I don't think a tornado touched down there. I was watching that on TV, and of course, it looked like the tornado lifted right before Huntsville, and it never reformed in that area down here in Alabama. But certainly lots of wind and hail reports occurred yesterday. We're not going to see all of that much in the way of severe weather today. Just a few trouble spots here in eastern North Carolina, and then really down here in Missouri and Arkansas, just a little strip of slight risk. That's a level 2. A level 1 risk exists down in Texas and a couple of other spots. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But your surface map today certainly shows that low pressure that I mentioned, and then a frontal zone of trough extending back north from that and then down toward the south, and a boundary here across much of the coastal plain into the Gulf Coast region. So we're going to see plenty of rain across the north, showers, thunderstorms potentially back into the middle plains, Tennessee Valley, and then down along the Gulf Coast too. That is your Wednesday forecast. So any of those areas could certainly see some showers and some snow showers possible in the higher elevations. Might see a few snow showers work in with some of this rain up here in the Dakotas as temperatures are cooling off up there. That is your Wednesday forecast, folks. Over the next few days, we've got a slight risk of excessive rainfall centered over Missouri and surrounding areas. That is for Saturday. For Sunday, same areas are under a slight risk, and that shifts a little bit to the south and expands a bit to the east as well. So it looks as though some energy in the upper levels or the mid levels of the atmosphere is going to work along with a sort of a boundary at the surface to create some training of cells as we get on in toward the weekend. And certainly here in the middle Mississippi River Valley, we have a chance for more rain where soils are saturated already and rivers are running high. So pay attention out there. This is the 5-day precipitation forecast from the Weather Prediction Center, and you can see right here centered over central and south central Missouri. That's where the bullseye is, but we've got a large area of several inches of rain that could fall over much of the middle Mississippi Valley, extending into the Tennessee Valley as well. These bright orange colors here are upwards of 5 inches. So expect this to change a little bit over the next couple of days as the little mesoscale features that sort of are going to be responsible for this come into better focus. But generally, if you're in this area, be prepared for more rain as we get through the weekend. Of course, in the Northeast, plenty of rain up here in this area too, with our primary low and then a secondary low forming. And that secondary low is going to turn into a little bit of a nor'easter, bring some gusty winds and potentially some snow. And we're going to look at that potential here in just a second. Looking at the severe weather threat for the afternoon, again, slight risk along the very far eastern sections of North Carolina. Marginal risk surrounds that. Potentially some supercells could develop out here as this secondary low starts to get organized along the coast. It's going to start to get organized right in here and then kind of scoot up to the east over the next couple of days. Slight risk back over the southern sections of Missouri, northern Arkansas, marginal risk around that. We're looking at primarily elevated supercells in that area, so not really expecting a ton of tornadic type activity. Certainly could see a brief tornado in eastern North Carolina. Wind is a little bit of a greater threat. And then hail is what our primary threat looks like. Cooling layers aloft and elevation of the base of the clouds is going to be more of a primary hail threat. That's what we're looking at. And then just a 5% chance in some of these other areas down here in Florida along the front. And then that little system that's working out of Mexico, spilling off the higher train, is going to push into southern Texas. Potentially a few clusters could develop. We could see some wind and hail down there too. So that's what's going on out there today. Severe weather threat for tomorrow, just general thunderstorm activity for the most part. We've got a little bit of a marginal risk here in Texas and Oklahoma for some, again, supercells that could develop into clusters and produce a little bit of a wind. Not much tornado activity to worry about, but wind, hail could certainly pop up with some of those clusters as they interact with each other. Same in Florida. Cooling in the mid levels could lead to some hail down there. And then as we look on into Friday into Saturday, again, same sort of story. We've got a system in the mid levels that's kind of creeping in here. A little bit of cooling along height. There's a dry line out here, so some of that could interact together. We might even see this get upgraded as we go on into maybe a slight risk or something. But just note here from western Nebraska in through most of Kansas into northeastern Oklahoma and places like that. Potential for a severe thunderstorm or two, more isolated in nature the way it looks right now. And then, of course, eastern Florida as well as we get into Friday. So that's what we've got going on the severe weather front. But here is our main weather story that's going to be the big weather maker over the next couple of days. So check this out. We are looking at Thursday, and that storm system here, let's roll this back just a little bit. So Thursday morning, we've got a low pressure getting organized here off the Gulf. You see that right here with these closed isobars here? You can easily tell that when you have these circles, that's where low pressure is getting organized. So this low is going to track to the north and to the east. This low here is our primary low up here in the Great Lakes, and a little bit of energy transfer going on, sort of like, not quite maybe a Miller B, but it sort of feels like that a little bit. So as we go on out through Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening, look, we see a primary low start to take over, deepen into the 990s. That'll get down into the mid 990s. And look what the GFS is doing here. Back here in the green mountains and the white mountains, we're looking at snow potentially falling. Now, this is the GFS. The European is not quite so enthusiastic. And we're going to look here at the ensembles to see maybe who's right about this. But that's what the GFS is showing as we get on into the overnight hours Thursday into Friday. Snow continuing, rain continuing. That low pressure deepens a little bit, eventually starts to fill in somewhat. But through the day Saturday, we're looking at rain falling for much of northern New England, actually, as we get through the day Saturday. And again, that will pull out as we go through the day on Sunday, leaving us with a little bit of shower activity, some clouds hanging on as we go through the day Sunday. In the meantime, let's roll this back so you can see something else. In the meantime, we've got these little disturbances here in the northern branch of the jet stream. There's a ridge that's building out west, and this little system here is going to work in over the course of Saturday. Saturday afternoon, we're going to start to see some rain and some showers break out as we get on into Saturday afternoon and evening through the Midwest. A little bit of a lee low pressure in the lee of the Rocky starts to develop here in Colorado. Systems working in around that. We're going to see some rain showers break out, some thunderstorms potentially as we go through Saturday and Sunday out here in the plains. And so could be quite an unsettled weekend for you folks in the plains as well. Looking at our Indianapolis forecast, so the race is going to be Sunday. The European model actually takes a line of storms through here in the morning and then clears it out for the afternoon. The GFS potentially keeps things unsettled. The hours advance in 6-hour increments. But if we look here at Sunday morning, look at this. Rain working into Indianapolis, and then over into Sunday afternoon, we've still got rain in the vicinity. So we could see a rainy period for the Indy 500, and just wanted to let you know about that in case that's of interest to you. But our primary focus over the next couple of days going to be rain in the plains and the Midwest, or the lower plains here into the mid-Mississippi Valley, and then, of course, into the Northeast as we go on into Sunday and Monday. So that's your forecast in terms of precipitation. Looking at the temperature profile over the next couple of days. So Thursday afternoon, much the same as Wednesday, but we're warming up a little bit back here in the upper plains where it was 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s to 50s today. It's going to be 50s and 60s tomorrow. Chilly up in the northeast with that rain, potentially some snow in the higher elevations out here looking, and of course warm across the south. As we start to move out in time, troughing begins to develop in the east, and we'll start to push that warm sector farther and farther to the south and to the east. Warmth returning into the mid-plains, so we've got 80s and 90s across the south, 60s, 50s across the north, 40s hanging on up here in New England as we get into Friday. Saturday, so as we approach the weekend, mainly 50s and 60s across the north, again 40s hanging on in New England, warm across the south, 80s, even 90s, and close to 100 in some spots down in Texas, and of course the desert southwest, very hot and humid in Florida as well, 90s down there. And then Sunday, much the same story. Big Ridge starts to go up here in the west, and that will mean 80s for you all if you're traveling out for the weekend. It's going to be a hot end of the weekend out west. Finally, New England starts to warm up a little bit, 60s across much of the north, 70s in the center of the country, 80s and 90s to the south. That's what we're looking at as we get on through the weekend. Now, we're going to take a look at snowfall next. I can't believe I'm talking about snowfall at the end of May here, but here we are. That's a sign of the times, folks. So we're going to look at 4 different models today, or actually 2 models and 2 ensemble suites, to see if we can get a clue about what we expect to happen up here. So check this out. As we go on through the next few hours and few days, Wednesday, Thursday, and now we get into Friday, this is the European model. So let's see what the European does. Okay, now we're starting to see a little bit of snow breakout over the course of Thursday evening into the overnight hours into Friday AM. Friday afternoon, we're seeing a little bit more snow. Where is it at? It's in the higher elevations, in the White Mountains, the Green Mountains, and we're seeing maybe even to the Berkshires too. We're seeing a little bit of snow, not a lot, just a little bit. What does the European ensemble say? Well, it tends, look at this, it tends to agree very, very well with the European model, actually. So if we look just at the European suite, we're not seeing a whole lot in the way of snow. But check out what the GFS tries to do here. And it's the GFS, so we need to take the GFS as we usually take the GFS, with a big grain of salt. But, you know, once in a while, a blind squirrel finds a nut. And as we go through, we've got a little bit of snow here in New York. And then look at this. Boy, it really starts to crank Thursday night into Friday morning. It just keeps on going. Friday night into Saturday morning, Saturday into Sunday. And we end up with over a foot of snow up here in the Berkshires, the Green Mountains, the White Mountains. Look at that, all the way up here in northern Maine. We're just crushed with heavy snow, heavy wet snow. What does the GFS ensemble say? Looking at you know, all of these different members of the GFS ensemble we're coming together here. We're saying the GFS might be a little bit out to lunch here, folks. GFS gets a little enthusiastic when it comes to snowfall. So we've got our GFS ensemble and our European ensemble, and they look very, very close to each other, and they look close to the European. This one does not look like the other, so we're going to go ahead and toss the GFS, but even so, we still have the potential for a couple of inches of snow up here in the higher peaks in northern New England. So interesting times ahead for the weekend. Be a little bit gusty too with that low pressure just offshore. Looking across the pattern as we go on out in time, this is the wind pattern in the upper atmosphere, and I've got this set to start for us here on Monday morning. A couple of quick things to just note about this. This gives us a clue of what's going on in the upper levels so that we understand what's going on in the lower levels. This is our jet stream pattern, and look at this. We've got 2 distinct branches of the jet stream. See this right here? This northern branch like this, good wind across here in the east with association with that storm. And then we've got a nice southern branch coming in here too, kind of dipping in and then coming up out of the south and southeast like that. So what that means for us is as we go out in time, we have to watch both of these streams and see how they interact. So Monday morning, looking at how this plays out as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, we've got a trough swinging in here to the east. Ahead of this trough, we're going to see a low pressure develop somewhere over the southeast, and you can kind of see wind associated with that, and that's going to help spark showers as we get on into, and maybe even rain as we get on into Wednesday and Thursday of next week with ahead of this trough. Continuing to see the southern branch feed energy in. Big ridge out west means warm out west. See this troughing? You can tell by these streamlines here. Ridge out west, trough in the east. Look at that big bowl trough. Not going to see big weather events with a big bowl-shaped trough, but we are going to see cooler than normal weather as long as that hangs on. So we get on out here and toward next Friday, next Saturday, next Sunday. Still cool in the east, northwest flow. Not going to see a ton of weather with a northwest flow, but we get on out into Monday. Still a little bit cooler than normal in the east. Warmer than normal over the center part of the country with ridging, and ridging in the upper atmosphere means a cap on big severe weather. So that's what we're looking at from the European ensemble. The GFS ensemble generally agrees with that. And if we look at the Weather Prediction Center over the next 6 to 10 days, big area of below in the east with the exception of Florida and northern Maine. And this is again May the 26th through May the 30th. Above normal out west, Hawaii mostly near to below normal. I keep calling this Hawaii. This big thing is, of course, Alaska, not Hawaii. This is Hawaii down here. Maybe I ought to start doing these in reverse because I always want to see Hawaii and Alaska instead of the opposite. If we go out here and look at our precipitation anomaly with that southern branch of the jet stream, will keep us wet across the south, drier across the north with the exception of the Pacific Northwest. Alaska is mostly above normal and Hawaii is mostly above normal. And that brings us to our geology update. Nothing new in the volcano front, just the 4 areas we've been watching. We did have a new earthquake pop up in Papua New Guinea, a 6.4 magnitude earthquake. So can't really see that, I don't think, too well here. No, but anyway, take my word for it. Not a lot of damage there. They're built to handle that. Solar activity, looking here at our sun, if I put this into motion, not a lot going on really. Just this southern coronal hole. We don't have any coronal hole streams coming out of here. You don't see anything popping off here either. A couple of filaments. There are a few sunspots, but they're not very active. So we're in good shape in terms of that. See, here's our sunspots. These are sort of just 490s facing us, 4090, but it's not really doing anything. Aurora viewing, not much going on here either because we don't have solar activity. We don't see auroras and we don't have anything to look at if you enjoy looking at such things. I do, but I'm too far south most of the time to see that, so never seen one. But in any event, that is your forecast for today. That's our show. We're going to end with our Weather IQ question, which was, what is the name of the index commonly used to measure drought conditions in the U.S.? The Richter Index, the Palmer Drought Severity Index, the Kelvin Rainfall Gauge, and the Fujita Wind Scale, and of course, it is B, the Palmer Drought Severity Index. That measures drought. The new drought monitor will appear tomorrow, and I will show it to you tomorrow when it does appear. So that is what that is called. The Richter Index, there's no such thing. The Richter scale measures earthquakes. The Kelvin Rainfall Gauge, again, there's no such thing. Kelvin is another measurement of temperature. When it gets down to 0 Kelvin, it's absolute zero. All motion stops. You don't want to be that cold, trust me. Fujita Wind Scale, it's actually the Fujita Tornado Scale, and it's actually the enhanced Fujita Scale, and that's what we measure tornadoes with, of course. And that is your weather for today. A couple of quick, interesting notes. Charles Lindbergh in 1927 completed his transatlantic flight and became the first person to fly nonstop solo across the Atlantic Ocean. That was in the Spirit of St. Louis. You've heard of the Spirit of St. Louis? That's what that was, his aircraft. And also in 1881, today marks the anniversary of the founding of the Red Cross. Now you know history and the weather. And of course, this is Cold Rain, as always, reminding you that if other stations run 24/7, we got you covered right here, right now, 4814. Take care, folks, and have a great day.